Okay, so once you've logged in, and I'll give you the username, password, etc. that you can choose, this is the first screen that you will see, and you can see it's an overall view of what they call the plant. If you just look at the bottom of the page, um, and you'll see the flows. So the grid you can see is flowing in from the right-hand side here, and it's 0.59 kilowatts at the moment, so 590 watts. The PV is providing 1.3 kilowatts. And the total load, this is this number here on the left, is 1.84 kilowatts. And that's what the house is using at this particular moment in time. There isn't excess PV to charge the battery, so nothing's happening with the battery at the moment. And 40% is the reserve margin that we put on this battery, and I'll talk about that in a minute. If you look at the bottom, you can see the self-sufficiency. In other words, how much of your power you've provided yourself today, 56%. The next number below that is 100% self-consumption. So in other words, everything you've created, you've used. You haven't pushed anything back into the grid. Then this number on top right here, 7.7, is the PV yield today. So how much solar power has been produced today. This number is a life number, the 659 Rand. That's how much money the system has saved since its implementation, which was just about a month and a half ago. Then if we scroll across, we can see pretty much the same information here, but depicted in a graphical format. There's a little bit more information at the bottom. The bottom graph shows you the total load consumption for today is 12.7 kilowatt hours. 7.4 of that, or 58%, came from the PV and battery, and 5.3 came from the grid. We also have a graph here, which is pretty cluttered and quite small. So usually what I do if I want to look at, say, just the solar, I switch off the load, I switch off the grid, I switch off the battery just by pushing those colors, and then I can look at just how the solar, where the solar came in, just by touching there. You can see it's about 6:30 this morning it started to kick off, but not much. And then we can see that the peak today was around here, which was 1.71 kilowatts so far. That was just about 10:30 this morning. Then we can dial these other numbers back in and look at any of them individually. So let's look what the battery did. So you can see the battery's filled in a little bit. Currently sitting at 41% state of charge. Right, and then the grid. Let's look at the grid. So that's the grid today. That's how much we've used from the grid, and the pattern of how we've used it. And then the load, which is shown really here, and how we've fed that load. You can see it's been pretty high now. This would have been something like a washing machine or a tumble dryer or something like that coming in. And yeah, so that's the graph. Then if we go back to the screen, if you wanted to, for example, look at any one of these devices. So if you wanted to look at the inverter, you touch the inverter and it'll go and get the inverter up for you, and it tells you exactly what the inverter is doing. Now I must say at this point, if you see here just above this number here, it says updated 1 minute ago. So this goes and takes a snapshot and it gets updated every 4 to 5 minutes. So this is not real time. This is a minute old already. So just bear that in mind. So if you switch something on, you won't see it instantaneously. In this case, now that we're only like a minute and a half probably in, it's going to take another 3 minutes to show on the screen any change. And then again, you've got some numbers here. Today's PV yield, the total PV yield, and then there's some detailed parameters, which is the PV information. You can see there's one string and that's the voltage, the current, and how much power it's producing. And then the settings. Okay, I can see more settings than you will be able to see as the user, but you've got a whole bunch of things that you can see and lots of parameters. You won't be able to see these because there are some things here that if you fiddle with can actually be a little disastrous, and not many, but there's one or two that could actually cause some problems. So we rather don't allow those to be accessed by the client, because it could cause more trouble than it's worth. And then if you wanted to now look at the battery, you can do it. You can go back to this page here, or you can just click on the top there, and I'll show you the battery. Currently sitting at 40%, and you can, the forced time charges, if you don't have enough and you know that there's load shedding coming, you may want to say, I want to give it a zap now, and you may put it from, let's say, 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock to do a forced charge. So it'll force charge from the grid, which is obviously going to cost you. So we don't like to use that, because the objective is to always try and keep the numbers or the return on the investment as low or as high as possible, and the usage as low as possible. So we've got this reserve capacity here, and what that is that's how much battery you want to save for backup purposes. In other words, if there's load shedding or a grid outage or something like that, you want to have 40% reserved. But it's actually not 40%, because if you look at this number below it, 10%, that is the cutoff value of the battery. So we never ever run a lithium battery to zero, because it will shorten the overall life of the battery. So effectively what that means is you've really got 30% to use for reserve capacity. So the other 60%, what will happen with that is you've made the power during the day using your PV. We've charged only from the battery. Now you get home in the evening and the house gets busy, and now you want to use that 60%, so that you're not using, particularly now that we've got time of use tariffs coming in, you don't want to be using the grid. So you're going to use the power that you created during the day. If you haven't used it, it does start using the battery from once it reaches 100%, but it will trickle charge it up as well. So yeah, basically that 60% will be what you use for what we call peak shaving. Mode scheduler, it's actually a new feature, but it's not something that I think too many customers are going to use. It's quite a complex thing where you can set times for it to charge the batteries only from the PV and so on and so forth, and it does get a little confusing. So